Okay guys, so you should have already completed the Am I Ready on pages 687 and 688. Remember, you had to complete the Am I Ready and the other side that says My Math Words. And now we're going to go ahead and go over it together. Remember, for this you don't need your red pen. You can just use your pencil. You can erase and rewrite if you need to. Also, do not tear this out. Do not tear the Am I Ready out. I am not going to be grading it. It is just for you as a review to show some of the things that we may be covering in this chapter. Okay, so the directions for number 1 and 2 say circle the longer figure. Remember, longer is a synonym for larger. It just means one is short, one is long. So we need to circle the longer figure. Well, in number 1, figure A is longer. So we are going to circle figure A. And then in number 2, figure B is longer, so we are going to circle figure B. We can tell because we can see that the ends of figure A in number 1 and figure B in number 2 go past the other figures. Okay, for numbers 3, 4, and 5, we're just going to be multiplying. We are not multiplying by double-digit numbers. We are only multiplying by single-digit numbers. So we really only have kind of one step. Number 3 is 12 times 9. Well, that's a basic fact, so we don't even have to work through it. We know that 12 times 9 is 108. If we wanted to check, we know that 9 times 2 is 18, and we regroup the 1. 9 times 1 is 9, plus 1 is 10, giving us 108. Number 4, we have 16 times 5. Now that is one that we worked with a lot, so you may know off the top of your head. However, it's not a basic fact, so I'm going to go ahead and work through it. 6 times 5, so we start with the ones place. 6 times 5 is 30. Carry the 3, or regroup the 3 to the tens place. 5 times 1 is 5, plus 3 is 8. So 16 times 5 is 80. Number 5, 225 times 5. That's not a basic fact or a simple fact, so we're going to work through it. We start with the ones place. 5 times 5 is 25. Regroup the 2 to the tens place. 5 times 2 is 10, plus 2 is 12. Regroup the 1 to the hundreds place. 5 times 2 is 10, plus 1 is 11. We put in our comma. So we know 225 times 5 is 1,125. Make sure that you're correcting if you need to with your pencil. If you got to numbers 3 through 5 and you had some trouble, you may want to go back on IXL and do some multiplication IXLs. Even if you've already done them, it would not hurt to go back and try some IXLs on multiplication, single digit and double digit, just to help you to refresh your memory, because it has been a little while since we've done this. Okay, the directions for numbers 6 through 8 say add, write in simplest form. So first we're going to add, and then we are going to write in simplest form. In the last chapter, we didn't really do much with simplest form, but from now on we will, if we come across fractions. So number 6, we have 2 tenths plus 5 tenths. Well, we have like fractions, so that means we don't have to change, we don't have to convert any of these fractions to another one. So we know step 1 is to add the numerators like we normally would. 2 plus 5 is 7. Step 2 is the denominators stay the same. The unspoken step 3 is to check for simplest form. We know that 7 tenths is in simplest form because our numerator 7 is prime and it is not a factor of our denominator. So we know 7 tenths is in simplest form. Number 7, 1/4 plus 1/4. Well, step 1, add the numerators. 1 plus 1 is 2. Step 2, the denominator stays the same. We have 2/4. We know that 2/4 is not in simplest form because our numerator is a factor of our denominator. That also tells us our greatest common factor is our numerator. So we are going to divide the numerator and the denominator each by 2. If you did not show this division, use your pencil right now to show it. 2 divided by 2 is 1. 4 divided by 2 is 2. So that means 1/4 plus 1/4 equals 1/2 in simplest form. Number 8, 1 6 plus 3 6. Well, step 1, add the numerators. 1 plus 3 is 4. Step 2, the denominator stays the same. Step 3, check for simplest form. We know this is not in simplest form because 4 and 6 are both even. We also know, because of basic facts, that the greatest common factor of each is 2. Make sure you show that division. 4 divided by 2 is 2. 6 divided by 2 is 3. So that means 1 6 plus 3 6 is 2/3 in simplest form. Now, numbers 9 through 11 say, write the time shown on each clock. This may be where some of you had trouble. We have not talked about this at all this year. It's been a while since you've talked about this. If you struggled with this, go ahead and find some IXLs. Excuse me. I'm not sure if there are any on the 4th grade tab that where you you look at the time and figure out what it is. You can check the other tabs like 3rd grade. 3rd grade should have one. If not, definitely 2nd grade. But I think 3rd grade should have some where you just have to tell what time is shown. So if you struggled with numbers 9 through 11, make sure to check on IXL so that you can kind of refresh your brain on how to do this. Okay, number 9. We see that the minute hand is on the 12 and the hour hand is on the 3. Whenever the minute hand is on the 12, whatever number the hour hand is on is what time it is. So that means this clock shows 3 o'clock. Remember, this is how we write a time. We write the hour, and then a colon, and then the minutes. We know the hour hand is on the 3. If the minute hand is on the 12, that shows 0 minutes. So we have 3 hours and 0 minutes, which is the same as 3 o'clock. Number 10, we have our minute hand on the 3. Remember, each of these sections is a group, between each whole number is a group of 5 minutes. So if we start at 0 on the 12, then on the 1 we're at 5 minutes, 2 we're at 10 minutes, 3 we're on 15 minutes. So we know whatever time it is, the minutes are 15. Now let's look at the hour hand. It's between the 4 and the 5, but it is closer to the 4, so that means it is 4:15. Whenever you're trying to figure out the hour, when the minute hand is not on the 12, look at what numbers the hour hand is between. Whichever one is the lower number is what goes in the hour place, because as soon as you get back to where the 5 is, that minute hand will be back on the 12. Okay, number 11. We see our minute hand is on the 9. We know we count by 5s each time we land on a whole number. So we have 0, 5, 10, 15, 20, 25, 30, 35, 40, 45. So we know the minutes are 45. Now again, we're going to look at the 2 numbers that the hour hand comes between, and we know that the hour is the lower one, the smaller of the 2 numbers. It's between the 5 and the 6. The smaller number is 5, so that means it is 5:45. Make sure that if you struggled with that you look on IXL for some help with that. And you don't need to do any yet that are elapsed time or anything like that. Just look for an IXL on any grade tab, 4th grade or below, of course, where all you have to do is look at a clock and try to guess what time, and try to, not guess, but figure out what time the clock is showing. Okay, so now turn to the back, and the directions for the back of the page, on page 688, say, use review vocabulary to write a sentence describing how you would find each measurement. Underline the word, that vocabulary word. Then provide an estimate for each question. Remember, an estimate is kind of like an educated guess. So you look and you try to guess. You don't just pull a number out, but guess based on other things that you know to get an answer. You're not finding an exact answer. You're not just pulling an answer out of nowhere. You're using your brain or your knowledge to figure it out. Our review words are estimate, length, time, and weight. Length, we know we use based on prior knowledge and what we just learned in science a few weeks ago. We know that length measures how long or short something is. Time, we know time tells how much time or how long a period of time is, And then weight tells us how heavy or light something is. So now let's look at our chart. The first bubble says, how would I measure how long my favorite song plays on the radio? So that means you had to use the correct word to from this box and then underline it in a sentence telling what you would do. Now you may have a different answer than I do. As long as your answer means something similar, it is okay. If your answer does not mean anything like what I say, you need to fix it with what I have. Remember, you can use your pencil. So what I would do is I would look at the time when the song starts and when it ends. So I would look at the time when the song starts and when it ends. And then I would subtract the start time from, not 4, from the end time, because the end time is going to be later or a larger time than the start time. So I would look at the time on the clock when the song starts, then I would listen to the song, and when it ends, I would look on the time clock again, at the time on the clock again, and then I would take away that start time from that end time to figure out how long it would be. My estimate for the length of my favorite song is about 4 minutes. I wouldn't say 1 minute because most songs are longer than that. However, there are some short songs, but most of us don't have a favorite song that is only about a minute long. I would also definitely not say 20 minutes because a song that is 20 minutes, I'm probably going to lose interest before I can even really start to enjoy it. Once I start to enjoy it, I'll probably start to lose interest. So 4 minutes is a good estimate for how long a song is. Now you may have 3 minutes, you may have 5 minutes, you may even have 6 minutes if you know that the song you really like is long. However, if you get more or less than that, maybe even 2 minutes I could see, but if you get more or less than like 2 to 6-ish minutes, you might need to think again about your estimate. Now the second bubble. What is the best way to measure the lightest item in my backpack? Now remember, you're not doing this with a scale because you're estimating it. So what I would do is I would compare the feeling of the items to find the lightest one, because you can tell by holding in your hands whether something is heavier or lighter. I can tell by holding my phone and this marker that this marker feels a lot lighter than this phone. So I would compare the feeling of the items to find the lightest object. Then I would use that and compare it to objects that I know the weight of. Like I know a can of soup is probably about half a pound. So I might compare that to like a can of soup, or a gallon of milk might be about a pound or 2 to measure how much it weighs. So I would compare the feeling of the items to find the lightest object, then compare that to objects I know the weight of. So, let's pretend like I'm talking about the lightest object in my backpack, which for you might be a notebook. Or maybe a textbook. So I would say that textbook compared to like maybe a can of soup or something might weigh about 1 pound. So that would be my estimate. Now you may think your backpack and you may think a folder, which may be less than that. You might say a couple ounces or you might say half a pound, that's okay. Okay, now the last bubble. How could I determine the distance from my front door to the nearest tree? Well, let's see. Oh, I forgot to underline the vocabulary. I have time and I have weight. Here. Okay. So, the last one, I know I probably need to use length because I use time and weight. Estimate is not a unit of measurement, it's just something we're doing. So I know length is probably the last one. So if I wanted to determine the distance, I would use objects like footsteps to measure, the length. So I know my foot is about, well, maybe your feet for some of you may be about 6 inches. So I would count how many steps, and then I would figure out, okay, 2 of my feet together might be, well, not mine, but yours, because your feet are mostly smaller than mine. 2 of my feet together might be about a foot. So I'm going to count every 2 steps, and that should tell me about how many feet. I am going to imagine, all of this might be different for all of us because we all have trees closer or further. None of us have a tree exactly the same distance as everyone else. So I would definitely say my estimate would be less than 1 mile. We definitely all live less than 1 mile from a tree. But I can't say only a foot or 6 feet because some of us may not even have a tree in our front yard. It might be in our neighbor's house, or it could be even down the street. But it's definitely, we all live within less than 1 mile of a tree. Okay, so that's all for math today. I would like you to go over the vocabulary cards and just take a look at them. Remember, you may tear those out and cut them apart and use them as flashcards. Make sure you keep them. Please don't turn them in to me. But I do want you to go over those vocabulary cards. You do not have to cut them out. However, I do want you to spend the next 5 minutes or so going over those vocabulary cards to kind of familiarize yourself with things that we will be covering in this chapter. Okay, that's it for math today. You have no homework, so you can go ahead and put your math book away. Well, after you look over the vocabulary cards, of course.